Hi, Tim. Thanks for joining us.
Great to see you, Marco.
Thank you so much. So, for everybody listening, I'm Marco, the CSO here at Red Digital, and we have Tim joining us, Tim Stephinson
Yes.
from SherpaTech. So, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Thanks, Marco. My name's Tim Stephinson from SherpaTech. We're an insurance specialist primarily for tech and IT companies. But because we help a lot of tech and IT companies, we also help their customers as well with cyber insurance in a number of examples. So, happy to be here. Great to be here today with you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Tim. And as I said, we're going to be talking about cyber insurance and business risk and whatnot, something that's very prominent now, especially with all the announcements that we're getting around cyber and AI and models that are even a bit too scary to be released and what this means for businesses.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
listen,
cyber insurance is a little bit like technology as well. It's a little bit of a misunderstood industry
yes,
sometimes, and what we try to do is help people understand cyber insurance and not be fearful of it, and that way they can use it to enhance their business and see it as more than just a cost, but actually a service that they can tap into when they need.
absolutely. So listen, thank you. You're going to help us understand the risk, navigate them, make sense of
Yep.
what it is and what it's not, as you said. So maybe let's start with that. And for anybody listening who might not understand what cyber insurance is, how do you define cyber insurance in simple terms?
Yeah, so cyber insurance is a relatively new insurance in comparison to things like professional indemnity or public liability coverages, which is either bad advice or people risk.
Mm,
Cyber insurance, those types of insurances have been around for hundreds of years, and the case law that they're built on is very, very stable. Cyber insurance, by contrast, has only been around about 15 years. It's a relatively new product, and so we actually see a lot of variation from different providers. So when you compare policy A, B, and C, you've really got to dig a little bit deeper and make sure that they're including the coverages that you need. But from a very high level perspective, we see a good cyber insurance policy including incident response, which is basically the emergency services you need. I call them the Avengers.
yeah.
They come running. You get these incredible lawyers with amazing technical people who all day, every day respond to cyber incidents. They have specialty people who do ransomware negotiation. They have data experts. They have decryption experts, recovery experts, and also people that are trained in dealing in the regulatory environment.
Mm,
And a lot of people say, well, what do lawyers have to do with IT infrastructure? But the regulation around IT now is incredibly complex. And if your end client might have a telecommunications specialty versus a medical specialty,
yeah.
there's different paths they need to navigate for their, I suppose, breach disclosure and other information.
Yes.
And the lawyers are the perfect person or people to manage or project manage that case. And they also provide a legal shield for the client as well. So
Mm,
you're protected by privilege. The insurance pays for the lawyers, however, they're appointed for the policy holder. So the
okay.
person who holds the insurance policy is engaged with a lawyer who's paid for by the insurer. And that's a bit of, I suppose,
Yeah.
a point that a lot of people get confused by thinking, hang on, are these lawyers here to try and get out of the claim? No, they're not. They're here to help you. And in many cases, we actually advise our clients to engage with the response lawyers before they even have an incident. That way, it's part of their incident response plan that they know the path that a case will go down. And one of the things that's happened in cyber insurance, and I'll get to why it's a lot cheaper now than it was 5 years ago, but they're very good at immediately responding and reducing the risk if there's a claim. And one of the ways they do that is actually by getting in quicker. If somebody sits on a claim and waits a week to tell the insurer,
Yeah.
it can actually go a lot further than it would have had they have had the incident response team jump on it in the first 30 minutes or a couple of hours.
Absolutely.
Um,
It brings me to an example that we just had with a client who was potentially looking at cyber insurance, and
mm,
we had our CISO speak to him, and he was trying to unpick the understanding of what a cyber attack and cyber insurance is.
mm,
And one of the first questions that this person was asked was, if you have a breach, do you know who you have to report it to? They didn't really know. And
yeah,
depending on the industry, this changes. And depending on the industries, you have certain amount of times. And if you don't hit those amount of times, you're
yeah.
automatically in breach of the law, right? And for
Correct.
example, paying ransomware is illegal, right? And a lot of people don't
Correct.
know that.
Yep.
So this is why we need, experts and lawyers involved.
And we've seen some insurance claims where they have paid the ransom, and that's where the lawyers can navigate that, whether you are or are not able to pay. The other thing that the policy includes is business interruption. So kind of like in a property policy, if your building burns down and you're a manufacturing business,
Yeah.
the business interruption insurance covers you for the time it takes to rebuild or reestablish or your lost income in that period, depending how you structure a policy. In cyber insurance, there's business interruption for lost costs or added costs of working. So if you're an online retailer and you're down for, a week, you've lost 1 week's worth of revenue potentially, but
Yeah.
it also can have a compounding effect where you might have lost future revenue because that week impacts others. Also in businesses that are heavily reliant on tendering or responses, if your network is down for a period of time, you can actually lose work that you could have been bidding on or going for. So the nature of all different businesses has different business interruption exposure, but I feel all businesses now have digital business interruption exposure, and a lot of people have very good managed service providers like yourselves across their infrastructure, but you're responsible for providing that infrastructure. If the client then has a user or is a victim of an attack, that's outside your area of responsibility typically, and that's the client's responsibility. And that's why the client needs to hold cyber insurance for their own business and their own data. And in our experience, when all the clients hold cyber insurance, the insurers jump in and all work together to mitigate a claim and pay the claim. Whereas where it gets messy is when different providers don't hold that cover.
That's very interesting. So there's a lot of, again, it is not necessarily easy, but it's not that difficult either once you get your head around it. But there's a lot of concerns that people have, which is unfortunately something that the insurance world has taught people the hard way, which is payouts, right?
Yeah.
And
Yep.
a lot of people, if you think about your car insurance, mainly is the one that everybody has, and getting a
Yep.
payouts can be incredibly difficult at times. What
It
is
is.
what is this like for
Yeah.
cyber insurance?
Yeah. So in our experience, the world that we work in of business insurance, that is broker-led business insurance, we feel the claims environment is very different to what people experience when they have a fender bender and they say the insurer doesn't pay.
Yeah.
To go back to basics with insurance is a contract of mutual honesty. The applicant or the business is honest about the risk factors they put forward, and the insurer is honest about the fact that they will cover those. So when the two match, we don't see any issues with payments. Insurers, their whole business model is covering these types of incidents, especially with cyber insurance. Many of them now include like a 24-hour incident response, no claims period, where they jump in and they triage it because they want to remove all barriers to people delaying that notification. But very much in our experience, it's about making sure the risk matches what the insurer is insuring for. And it's important to have an insurance broker that actually pulls apart that risk and really challenges you on what are you covering. We do a lot with our clients around really peeling back the layers. I mean, I've had construction companies that have really large digital exposure, and it's actually about understanding, but if this went down, how would that affect your business interruption and what are you insuring for? I kind of take a risk tolerant approach to insurance where we're trying to insure for the things that kill the business. So the big risks, instead of worrying about, if we lose a laptop on a train, we're worrying about what actually kills the business or takes it down. And those larger type insurance products in cyber, you could have coverage for $500,000 or $1 million worth of protection, and it might only cost you a few $1,000s in the current market. So it's a very affordable insurance for the ultimate risk that it's covering.
Okay, that's great to hear. So if we talk about people deciding how much risk they should carry with cyber insurance, would that be a good way to look at it? Going like, what is actually going to, take my business down for X amount of days or
Correct.
forever
Yeah.
versus a blip?
And The biggest risk we see at the moment for businesses in digital exposure is supply chain. So many businesses are
Yeah.
built around third-party platforms or other tools that they use
Hmm.
that in the event one of those platforms goes down, they have no control over that infrastructure. So typically a line of business app or a CRM, even a point of sale system in a retail business, if they go down and the business can't trade, that's a cyber incident or that's a cyber claim.
Understood. And is it as simple as picking up the phone to your cyber insurer and go like, I think I had a breach. I had a breach. How's the
Yeah.
process?
So the correct person to always talk to is your insurance broker.
Hmm.
Most businesses will have an insurance broker that manages their property and liability insurance, and they're the best person to talk to about cyber exposures. Insurance is in the Australian market, it's a regulated product, so we have to operate under an Australian financial services license.
Mm.
So we're very regulated about the advice we can and can't give.
Okay.
So we work with clients to really unpack that risk and articulate what is and what is not covered. With a cyber policy as well, you can cover for things like third-party payments. So, if your accounts team pays a fraudulent invoice, you can insure for that, but that's sometimes a more expensive cover. So some businesses will look to sublimit that or maybe not cover it at all, but businesses that have really good controls around that area. So if we could show an insurer that all bank accounts are verified via a third party before they're changed, payments are always, dual authorized,
Yeah.
accounts aren't changed without management, like all these other controls you can put in place. We show an insurer that, then we can get really good pricing for that type of insurance because the likelihood of it occurring is lower.
Yes.
In addition, frameworks as well are a great way to show that compliance with insurers. So, using, ISO, NIST, CIS, and this is where it's industry relevant,
Yes.
that you make sure you show the insurer that you've actually thought about your governance risk, and compliance and brought that all together in a holistic way.
That makes sense. Thank you. And it prompts another question for me, which is, trying to relate to my world where a client potentially wants to change supplier. In their case, it might be insurance, and they go, "Oh, we're covered for
Mm,
this, this, and this," and we look at their agreement and go like, "Well, actually, you're not."
yeah.
Um, and anything that you do, your current supplier is going to charge you by the hour
Mm,
because you think you're covered, but you're not. Um,
mm.
have you had a case where you've reviewed a business insurance or another cyber insurance from another supplier and a business went like, we're covered, but when you dig into it, you realize they're not and they had a big risk?
Yeah, we actually see that a lot. And a lot of it comes from, look, insurance isn't the most exciting topic.
Yeah,
So we have to work with our clients to make them understand that, hey, we're not actually selling insurance, we're discussing risk.
yeah,
And so what typically happens is business grows and changes quite quickly.
mm,
But insurance is quite slow to adopt those changes. And so your typical insurance cycle is annually. And so it's usually discussions had with the CFO around that insurance program. But we find businesses have greater success when it's a whole of business discussion and you have technical management all contributing to that what is covered risk and also that incident response plan about, well, what is going to happen. And a simple example is, you could set an excess quite high to reduce the cost of your insurance, knowing that you have a really strong technical team already engaged. And if it's
yeah,
a small phishing attack or something, you manage that internally. You still notify the insurer, but they're not picking up the bill. But you're covering above $100,000 as an example. If it goes above that, then the insurer is going to jump in and help. But all of those things, it's important that you predetermine those instead of having a claim and then going, oh, hang on, what's our excess or what is covered or excluded? Ransomware exclusions are really common. So we see a lot of
yeah,
insurers carving out ransomware. And in most cases now, we can have those exclusions removed. You just have to have the conversation with the underwriter and explain what platforms are operating to remove the risk of ransom encryption, or that you have a really strong data recovery plan and you're using a certain set of software tools that will allow that to happen in real time. Different industries carry different risks as well. So we might see one industry where they're not that concerned about the volume of, say, personal information because it's in a secure environment. But then we might see medical being
yeah,
more susceptible. And so you can get two businesses with same kind of I suppose, avatar or the look to that business, but one premium will be higher than the other because of the industry they're in and the lack of appetite from the insurance market for those industries.
That makes sense. So let's talk about what makes a business handle risk well versus one that does. And you talked about that Swiss cheese model, right, in terms of
Yeah.
your insurance. And if anybody doesn't know what a Swiss cheese model is, happy to answer. Let me know. We're not actually talking about cheese, but it's what makes a business good at handling risk? Is it a simple, process and procedure things? Is it
Yep.
reviewing the ways that they work? Is it having multiple steps, such as, multiple factor authenticator? Is
Yeah.
it all of that?
Yeah, so that the way we sort of approach it is the first thing you need to do is identify the risk or be
Yeah,
aware of it to be able to manage it. You can't insure for something you don't know about. But insurance is also built to cover those outlining cases or those 1% cases that can really topple a business.
yeah,
So the businesses that we see managing that well do implement frameworks and standards. And even for a small business, you can use your insurance proposal form as a framework or a standard because they ask you a bunch of questions about your environment.
yeah,
And if you're answering on the negative all the time, you can be pretty clear about the things you need to do to improve that. The interesting thing with insurance is only that the way that insurance is priced is a little bit backwards looking. So instead of looking forwards and saying, we think we're going to have a case from this, they say, what have we suffered losses from? And then they try to exclude those cases from their coverage. So that's where ransomware exclusions came around because there was a lot of ransomware going on and taking out the premium pool.
mm,
So the quick way to improve that is to remove the ransomware as a coverage area. But then as frameworks and others start to improve that coverage of ransom cases and those drop off, then we can look to remove those coverage sections.
that makes sense. So
Mm.
what we're saying is if you have business insurance, you're not automatically cyber insured.
Definitely, yeah, that's absolutely. Business insurance or your BizPack insurance
Yes.
typically doesn't include cyber insurance. Cyber insurance is its own class of insurance, and we would see that now as I suppose, an area that a business needs to look on and ask. It's okay as well not to take insurance.
Yes.
We're not. We look at it and say, if you're not going to take insurance, how do you deliver these services? And some large companies do look at that and say, we just need to make sure we actually have the same incident response team that the insurance will pay for on our speed dial so that we can access them as we need, and we'll pay for that as we need that. And that's an example of self-insurance, which is totally acceptable, but you just need to know the risk is there to
Yes.
cover it either by, we talk about, you cover it with your own cash or your P&L, or you cover it with insurance.
Yes. Regardless of your choice, and I mean, paying by the day on those incident response teams is not cheap, but regardless
Yeah,
of your choice, you need some sort of preparation. You need either
yeah,
a business continuity plan, a business disaster recovery plan, something because thinking on the spot when you get
yeah.
attacked is going to be nearly impossible.
Now, one of the good things as well that's coming from cyber insurance, because it's an evolving product, is they're now starting to include more GRC, governance, risk, and compliance services that come with an insurance policy.
Hmm.
So one of the larger providers, Chubb, now include with their policy a lot of services or software offerings that actually reduce the likelihood of a claim.
Yeah.
They'll also help you build an incident response plan. We always advocate for clients to do that in consultation with their managed service provider. Your incident response plan as it exists is usually built from a technical control perspective. It doesn't always consider insurance. And so it's important that those two streams of work align. And when one hands off to the other and vice versa. Because an MSP should be a real stakeholder in the incident response.
Yes, absolutely.
But they really should dovetail with the insurer. And if you can do that before an incident, everyone's better prepared.
Completely agree. I completely agree. I
Mm,
think preparation is going to cost you, 1/5 of or less of whatever
yeah.
your incident is going to cost you, and it's going to give you
Mm,
so much peace of mind that if something happens, you have a plan, right?
yeah.
And the likelihood of something happening then is actually less because as you
Mm,
uncover this, you'll find risks that you
yeah.
might not have thought of before, and you'll put mitigations in place.
And look through some of those tabletop discoveries as well. If you do identify risks that you've resolved, they're actually good things to share with the insurer because they
Yeah.
can actually uplift the maturity of the organization that the insurer is assessing. We do that with a lot of our larger accounts. They'll do annual sort of tabletops or onboard or like reviews with the insurer to go further than just do we have an incident response plan,
Yes.
because that can improve coverage.
Yes. So what's interesting about cyber insurance is versus regular business insurance or everyday insurance for whatever your vehicles is
Mm,
that it doesn't change the way, sorry, the business insurance doesn't change the way you operate necessarily, right? But when you start thinking about cyber insurance, you can use it as a strategy to go, this is where my risks are and this is where I have to change my business and
mm,
actually make myself a bit more bulletproof against cyber risks. So it
yep.
can change the way that you work. So in a way, just thinking about it and talking to your broker about it is a
Mm,
strategic change for the business.
definitely. And a lot of underwriters now have invested in third-party assessment tools.
Mm,
They don't replace the security offerings that come from an MSP, but they share what they see as the risks that the insurers are concerned with. And sometimes we get into a bit of a technical discussion between insurers and technical managed service providers where they have different views on whether those risks that are being highlighted are relevant or not. We see a lot of insurers being concerned about web-facing risks. However, they typically sit sometimes outside of the managed service provider. They're managed by the marketing team and those sort of areas. So, but if you can use the cyber insurer to bring the business together, so all of those departments are aware of what affects the coverage, then they can actually resolve all of those areas collectively.
yes, that's very interesting. And let's talk about that a second because not long ago, I heard somebody say if you get some sort of certificate in
Yep.
cyber insurance and you go back to your broker, your insurance is automatically going to decrease in price, which seems like a
Yeah.
misconception.
It's a bit of a challenge because insurers rate on what, as I said earlier, insurers rate on where they've lost money. So in some cases, regardless of the frameworks that are in place, if last month an insurer had a lot of claims from third-party payments to fraudulent bank accounts,
Mm,
we will see increases in those areas. The other thing that we're seeing in the Australian market now is a saturation of cyber insurance providers. There's now 48
my
cyber
goodness.
insurance providers, and the market size is about $750 million. So it's quite a small insurance market for
Yes.
a lot of providers. So it's actually a really good news story for anyone looking for cyber insurance because the premiums are really cheap. So there's a lot of competition, and your local broker will be able to go to 4 or 5 providers and get some really competitive quotes. But what that also means is that the premiums are already very cheap.
Yeah.
So, and while some businesses above a certain turnover, frameworks are absolutely required. Many insurance providers now will only ask 3 or 4 risk questions to actually place a cyber insurance policy. So for any business that's considering going through a cyber uplift, I always advise get a cyber insurance policy in place first and then go through the uplift process. And then you can share the steps you've improved. And there may be a premium reduction. And if you do get one, that's a bonus. But because the cyber market is so competitive at the moment, we're not seeing 20-30% savings on some of those uplifts because the standard of those businesses or the cyber controls around a lot of those businesses is actually really good in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
And the third-party assessment tools the insurers are using, they're using those as a tool to validate what that looks like. In some cases, they're only scanning the outward-facing environment, but insurers use tools like that almost like in home insurance. If they check that all the windows have locks and bolts on them, they can make an assumption about the other factors that you would do to secure the house. And
Yes.
so when they scan all the outward facing information and they see that your firewall is actually up to date on its software patching, they make an assumption that it's being managed well. But if they scan that outward facing firewall and see that it's, has a vulnerable patch on it, then they'll say, no, we don't want to insure for that. So
Yes.
that's how they kind of use that information.
That makes sense. So those frameworks or certificates,
Mm,
it's not necessarily untrue that you get a discount. It doesn't just apply automatically, but what it does is it makes you potentially go from bad risk to good risk. And
Yeah,
that transition is what's going to give you a better premium.
correct. And then we do see premium reductions when
Hmm.
those risks are improved. So yeah, no, we're definitely seeing a lot of that at the moment. But
Yeah.
it's a case by case basis, and as a broker, I actually can't give financial advice around premiums, what they will and won't cost. I can share an indication that from similar clients we've seen this, but the underwriter is the only one who can price that risk.
Yes. And there's a nuance there, which is not only as a broker you can't do it, but there's certain information that if you're not a broker, you actually you
Correct.
legally cannot share. Can you
Yes.
help us out
Yeah.
on this?
Yeah. So there's a difference between general advice and factual advice in the
Yes.
insurance world, and then sort of specific advice. So for factual advice, an MSP can share factual advice about, emergents have a cyber. You have a cyber policy with emergents and it's got a $1 million limit. That's a good policy. But if you're then going to delve into the coverage of that policy, that's where you need a licensed insurance broker to actually give that advice, because
Yes.
if we guide a customer in the wrong direction, we hold professional indemnity advice
Of
for
course.
that bad advice.
Of course.
Whereas a managed service provider doesn't hold professional indemnity to protect them for insurance advice.
Yeah, of course. And the client might be misguided or feel, hard
Yeah,
done by, and it's not anybody's fault. It's just that the right person with the right knowledge wasn't involved in the
yeah,
conversation.
yep. And then there's a lot of really good insurance brokers out there now who can help with cyber insurance. So yeah, the first point of call is really talk to your insurance broker.
Yeah, yeah, that seems to be the recurring theme here, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about something that's been on everybody's lips, and it's AI, right? And
Yeah.
I'm feeling it in a way that I'm trying to implement AI into the business, and we have in some cases done so very successfully. In other cases, every time I try to build a business case, as soon as I build one, the following week, literally the following week, something new has come up that
Mm.
replaces it, or it's cheaper, it's better, has an add-on. How much does this scare you, or what advice would you give businesses in terms of the progress in which AI is being upkept in terms of cyber insurance?
Yeah. So there's two areas of insurance that AI touches for me. So you have professional indemnity, which is bad advice, and then you
Yes.
have the cyber exposure. So if we were to take one of Red's customers that might be an accounting firm who's using AI in their business, if the AI gives bad advice to their customers, they could have a professional indemnity claim.
Yes.
So they need to make sure that they have coverage for the AI for, how they're actually operating their business. The other area then is the cyber exposure. So in the event that they're left vulnerable because the AI has done something, been connected in or misconfigured, that could then cause a cyber claim or cyber exposure. The good thing with AI though is that from a protection perspective, current insurance policies are already built to handle breaches that are caused by AI. So we're not currently seeing AI exclusions in cyber policies. But what we are seeing is insurers stay silent on it. So they're not actually putting a stake in the ground that we will or won't cover something.
Mm.
So what we advise any business that's using AI in a transformational way is to actually be proactive in sharing that with your insurer and bring your insurer into that conversation. And what you then remove is the chance for them to stay silent on it, and you make them take an affirmative position that our client is using AI in this way and we will cover an exposure if it exists. And that way then you avoid that argument about will they or won't they pay at the time of a claim. And because of the speed at which AI is accelerating, it's really important to bring those use cases to your broker to share with the insurer. So because some of them may just be platform features,
Yes.
and that's fine, but you can share that proactively with the insurer to say, hey, we've turned on these platform features. Some insurers are actually requesting those AI platform features to be turned on in some ways.
Yes.
But if you send an email to your broker and say, hey, look, we've actually just turned on enterprise grade Claude and we've connected it through to we've done an MCP server and it's going now through to our database and blah, blah, blah. Would that be covered by our cyber insurance? They can take that to the insurer to get an answer on. And then you have some degree of comfort that eventuates from that. You're more protected.
Yeah, that makes sense. And a lot of what people use AI for these days is research, right?
Yep.
I mean, it has a lot of good use, but if we're talking about the co-pilots or the chat GPTs of this world, a lot of people use it as a Q&A, right?
Yeah.
And there is a level of discretion that needs to be applied there, because there's two very good quotes that I heard about AI that I'll share. One is, what is the difference between a human giving advice and an AI giving advice? Is the human can stop and say, I don't know. The AI will keep BSing you.
Yep.
Right. Yep. And if it's wrong, it's wrong.
Yeah.
And that's the first really, really important line, which is talk to your broker, talk to a human who can go, we'll find this out. We're not too sure. It might not take us the 20 milliseconds that ChatGPT or Copilots can take, but we'll assure you that it's the right answer. And the other quote was that AI can answer, but humans can question. And I think that is a really, really good one as well, which is similar enough. If you're unsure, just don't take the advice for granted. It can be great for research, but if you look at where AI is getting a lot of information from, it can be popular websites as Reddit or other things, and millions of users potentially sharing wrong information. And that's where I think, for example, ChatGPT gets something, don't quote me on this one, but 50% plus of their answers come directly from like Reddit in some cases, which is a bit absurd, right? I'm sure there's plenty of good advice in there, but if you're looking for cyber insurance advice, maybe you don't want to go to Reddit.
Yeah, and that's where I suppose having a professional implementer actually help you go through that journey. There's a number of, we have a couple of clients in this space where they are, specific AI consultants going in to do that work and making sure the right guardrails are there. And I suppose people are, worth speaking to Red about that, because I know you guys are doing some really innovative stuff there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And asking a question doesn't cost anything, right? It's just the start of a conversation. And if anything, you just walk out of there better informed than you were, half an hour before that conversation. So another few questions for you, if you don't mind. One is, if you could look at cyber insurance as a whole and give one piece of advice to businesses, what would it be?
I think it's read your policy. And you don't have to read the whole thing, but focus in on the exclusions and the endorsements, because if you read what it doesn't cover, it's quite obvious. Insurers have to be very blatant about this. You can then overlay that with your business. And also, if you have an assumption that it is covering something, confirm that. Or what are you scared of? Is it, your servers being encrypted? Is it the server burning down? Is it be prescriptive about the digital exposure you have, or those use cases? I always ask my customers for what are your big three risks. So if you can bring those big three risks that as a business you're fearful of, sometimes they're not even an insurance problem, but insurance can actually help you uplift in those areas as well. So yeah, we actually see some large businesses, they use insurance as a way to cover against profit instability from a cyber claim, because, the bottom line can be affected quite quickly in a large business. And the insurance product allows that to have a more stable response. So if, some businesses will have different risk concerns, others it might be reputational. Articulate that, and then you can put the right wrapper around it.
Fantastic. And you don't have to be a technical guru, right, to read your cyber insurance or understand it or ask the question, right? If you don't know, ask the question.
Yeah. Also, one of the other big things is it shouldn't live in a silo in your business.
Yes.
It actually should be a business-wide knowledge piece. The entire team is aware that we do have cyber insurance. And if somebody comes across something on a Sunday afternoon and they feel it's a risk, put your hand up and raise the flag to the insurer if needed. Bringing your insurer into the problem isn't a negative. A lot of people used to be fearful about, if I tell my insurer the premiums are going to rise.
That's
With
right.
cyber insurance, it's almost the opposite. Bringing your insurer in early allows them to triage and help you and hopefully confirm it's a false positive or something. And then they see that as actually good cyber hygiene.
Yeah, absolutely. And cyber insurance can sit through your MSP, but it has to be held on your own. As you said, it has to be in your name. But There's
Yeah,
people
no,
out there
that's
that
sorry,
can help.
that's a point just to hone in on. The MSP does not traditionally provide cyber insurance for their clients.
That's
Um,
right.
Everyone needs to hold their own cyber insurance because it's a first party cover. So it's there to protect the person whose name is on the policy.
Thank you. Thank you. That is a correction that is absolutely necessary. Make sure people understand the right thing. Thank you, Tim. One last question. It's a bit more personal. How did you end
Sure.
up in cyber insurance?
Oh, so I'm a I'm a recovering builder.
All
I
right.
had a construction company for a number of years, so we did a lot with risk management.
Yes.
And I worked in a couple of companies that one in particular that did lights, lasers, and fountains in Dubai, Singapore, and Hong Kong.
Oh, wow.
And I loved the connected nature of technology, and also really cool toys that could be controlled with technology. And
Yeah.
with that, we managed a lot of personnel risk, a lot of digital risk. And then my wife said I was traveling too much, and I discovered the wonderful world of insurance. And it was one of the things when I had my own businesses was nobody ever explained to me how to use insurance. I was always told I needed it, but my broker at the time really didn't articulate what it was there for. And I actually reflect now on a number of occasions where I could have had insurance claims or used my policies more proactively.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of what we do with business owners is really help them understand policies and then use it as a lever within their business to improve maturity and profitability.
Fantastic. That sounds great. And light lasers and fountains might be
Yeah.
the name of our next conversation. So we'll talk about that as well. Well, listen, Tim, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute
It's been
pleasure
great,
talking to
Marco.
you. I've learned a lot as well. And safe to say that if anybody has any questions, they can reach out to you directly.
Absolutely. Yeah. You'll find us on LinkedIn or the website. But yeah, we're always happy to have a conversation or help where we can.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Tim.
Thanks, Marco.
Have a lovely day.
Cheers.